The story begins in the rural hill areas of Norway, where we meet Christian, a wealthy young heir living alone in his large mansion. His parents have passed away, and now he spends his days cooking for himself and for what appears to be his pet dog. But soon, we discover something shocking. This dog isn't an animal at all. It's actually a man wearing a dog costume. At first, it doesn't feel too strange. After all, there are people with unusual roleplay interests or unique lifestyles. Maybe this is one of them. But as the story continues, we realize there's much more beneath the surface. The man inside the costume is called Frank, and Christian treats him exactly like a real dog, feeding him from a bowl, taking him for walks, and even bathing him. Strangely, Frank also behaves like a dog, walking on all fours, barking, and fully embracing the role. We never learn much about their past or how this bizarre relationship began. Yet, on the surface, everything looks calm. Christian seems to genuinely care for Frank, showing no signs of abuse or aggression. To them, this strange arrangement feels completely normal. These days, Christian often visits a dating app profile of a girl named Sigrid. Her photos attract him, but being shy and introverted, he hesitates to message her, until one day he finally does. To his surprise, she replies the next day and directly suggests meeting for a date instead of chatting. Excited, Christian gets ready and heads to the restaurant on time. We learn he's disciplined, health-conscious, and values punctuality. Sigrid arrives late and apologizes, but Christian, being polite and gentle, doesn't mind. They compliment each other, and Sigrid explains she prefers knowing people in person rather than online. During the date, she briefly checks her phone, but apologizes again. She shares that she's taking a 1-year psychology course because her grades weren't great. When she asks about his work, Christian admits he's not doing any job, just living freely. He doesn't show off his wealth, which makes him appear humble and sincere. Christian was genuinely interested in Sigrid's talks. While watching his calorie intake, he explained that since he rarely went out, he had to look after his health. Sigrid mentioned she worked as a cashier, and Christian praised her for it. Unlike most rich people who avoid such lives, he respected her work, which made him seem mysterious and grounded. He also admitted that he didn't like meeting too many people, but found Sigrid pleasant and friendly. Their date went well, and soon Christian invited her to his house. Sigrid agreed. He seemed polite, trustworthy, and kind. At the mansion, she was surprised to learn that he was a millionaire who had inherited everything. Though she wasn't a gold digger, she was impressed by how humble he was, never showing off his wealth. She joked that she could never live alone in such a big house. Christian said he disliked small closed spaces and mentioned his dog. When she asked about the breed, he hesitated, saying it was hard to explain, which Sigrid didn't take seriously. Meanwhile, Frank, the dog, secretly watched them, perhaps nervous or shy. He didn't come out that night. Sigrid also learned that Christian's parents had passed away, which made him seem even lonelier. Later, the two grew closer and spent the night together. But the next morning, Sigrid woke up shocked. There was a man in a dog costume in the room, and Christian was treating him exactly like a real pet. Christian made a lovely breakfast, but Sigrid couldn't eat anything. Confused, she asked, "Didn't you say you live alone?" Christian replied, "Yes, but that's Frank, my dog." Shocked and uncomfortable, Sigrid decided to leave, making an excuse. Before she could go, Christian apologized, saying, "I understand this looks strange. I should have told you earlier." But Sigrid was too unsettled to stay. She asked him to drop her home, and he did. Before parting, he said kindly, "If you ever feel like meeting again, just message me." Aside from Frank, Christian seemed perfectly normal and polite. Later, Sigrid told her friend Aurora everything, how he was nice and rich, but had a man in a dog costume he called his pet. When Aurora saw Christian's picture, she was surprised. Everyone knew his late father was a multimillionaire. Curious, they searched online and found videos about people who enjoy pretending to be dogs. Slowly, they realized this might be harmless as long as no one was hurt. Aurora said, "Everyone has weird interests. You shouldn't leave him for that. He's handsome, rich, and kind." Sigrid's view changed. It didn't seem so strange anymore, so she decided to call Christian. Coincidentally, he called her too. They talked warmly, both apologizing, Sigrid for leaving, and Christian for not explaining earlier. He then invited her for dinner, and this time she happily agreed. Later, while spending time with Christian, Sigrid asked about Frank, whether he always acted like a dog. Christian explained, "He doesn't act like one. He is a dog, and I'm his owner." Sigrid found this strange, since she had never heard anything like it before. Christian tried to justify it, saying, "There are many things people once found odd that are normal now." Sigrid agreed, comparing it to how society now accepts things that were once judged harshly. When she asked if this seemed normal to him, Christian said, "You get used to it." Soon, Sigrid met Frank in person. He behaved just like an excited dog, which made Christian angry. He scolded Frank and sent him away. Christian then apologized for Frank's behavior and offered to drop Sigrid home, but she chose to stay of her own will. Christian opened up about Frank's story, saying he was his only true friend since childhood. Being rich made it hard for Christian to find real friends, and whenever people learned about Frank, they distanced themselves. That night, Sigrid stayed at Christian's house again. The next morning, Christian surprised her with breakfast, and she was impressed, especially when she realized he remembered exactly how she liked her coffee. The next day, Christian called Frank and told him to apologize for his behavior. Sigrid smiled, saying she'd already forgiven him. When she asked if Frank had said he was sorry himself, Christian replied, "Yes, in his own way, since Frank couldn't speak like a human." Just then, Sigrid remembered her class in 15 minutes, so Christian dropped her at college. There, she met Aurora, who was surprised to learn Sigrid and Christian were dating. Aurora warned her not to agree to everything so quickly, saying rich people like him are used to getting whatever they want, and she should make him work for it. Sigrid thought about it, but couldn't stay away. She spent almost all her time with Christian. One day, while talking about Frank, Christian said he'd been through a lot. "I don't know why he became a dog," he said, "but what matters is that I'll always be there for him, just as he was for me." Sigrid understood and agreed. Later, Christian invited her on a trip to his family cabin, and she gladly accepted. Aurora tried to warn her things were moving too fast, but Sigrid seemed blinded, either by love or by the promise of a bright future. After a long drive, they reached the cabin. Everything looked peaceful, and even Frank seemed happy, like a dog excited by a new place. That evening, during dinner, Sigrid kept checking her phone, which annoyed Christian. He asked her to stay off her phone for the weekend so they could spend quality time together. Sigrid agreed, and Christian locked both phones in a box, something she didn't realize would matter later. That night, Sigrid played with Frank, laughing as she treated him like a real dog. Everything seemed perfect. For now. While Christian was in the kitchen, Frank took a risk and went to Sigrid. He removed his mask, revealing his terrified, exhausted face, and whispered, "We have to escape. Christian is insane. He'll kill us both." Sigrid froze in shock. Her world turned upside down. Before she could react, Christian returned. Seeing her quiet and pale, he asked what was wrong. She lied, saying she felt unwell, and he told her to rest. but sleep was impossible after what she'd heard. The next morning, while Christian slept, Sigrid tried to run, but the door was locked. Christian appeared just then, and she nervously said she only wanted fresh air. Smiling, he said he always kept the doors locked, to keep others out, or maybe in. Sigrid knew it wasn't a joke. He insisted on going outside with her. Trying to stay calm, she asked for a spare key, but Christian said there was only one. Back inside, she suddenly vomited, clearly anxious and weak. Christian sensed something was off. Sigrid asked for her phone, saying her mother was sick. Christian brought it, but didn't hand it over. Instead, he called her mother himself. Luckily, her lie wasn't caught, but she knew she had to think fast. Pretending to relax, she suggested taking Frank for a walk while Christian prepared a surprise for her. It would help her bond with Frank, she said. Christian silently agreed, and Sigrid left with Frank, finally seeing a small chance to escape. While Sigrid was talking to Frank, he warned her that Christian was probably watching them, so she should act as if they were just playing. Sigrid followed along, while Frank whispered that running away was useless. Christian would already be ready for it. He said, "You'll have to eliminate him," but Sigrid refused. She couldn't bring herself to do that, realizing she was now trapped with a dangerous man. After a while, Sigrid returned home with Frank. Once they arrived, Christian took Frank to the bathroom, giving Sigrid a chance to secretly grab a knife and hide it in her room for safety. Just then, Christian also came in, saying he needed to change the bedsheets. Terrified he might notice the knife under the bed, Sigrid quickly offered to handle it herself. Later, when Christian came back, he suddenly snapped at her for not folding the sheets properly, then laughed, saying he was only joking. But in that brief moment, Sigrid saw something dark in his behavior, a glimpse of the madness hiding behind his calm face. When he tried to get close, she pushed him away. Her feelings were gone. She knew now that Christian was only pretending to be kind, while hiding something monstrous inside. At dinner, Sigrid asked about Frank, and Christian said he was asleep. She suspected otherwise. After a few sips of wine, she passed out. Christian had drugged her drink. When she woke up in bed, the knife was missing. Christian appeared and asked her to come outside. He played a recording of her and Frank's conversation from the woods. He'd heard everything. His calm mask had vanished, revealing the darkness within. He said, "I wanted you to prove your loyalty, but you failed." Then he took her to a locked room, where Frank was trapped in a cage, terrified and broken. Here we learn that Christian had forced Frank to confess everything, proving how terrified Frank was of him. But telling the truth didn't save him. Christian wanted to punish him to show Sigrid what disloyalty leads to. Frank's mouth was tied shut, and Sigrid watched in disbelief, horrified by his madness. When Christian opened the cage, Frank bit him and tried to fight back. Using that moment, Sigrid ran from the house, but the cabin was far from any help. When Christian realized she'd escaped, he went into a furious rage and blamed Frank. Frank begged for mercy, but hearing him speak only enraged Christian more. Frank wasn't allowed to act human. Christian said, "You forgot you're an animal," dragging him into the barn. There, he tormented Frank brutally, showing why Frank had been so broken and obedient. Christian had terrified him into becoming a dog in every sense. At that moment, Christian's true nature was clear. He was a monster in human form. Meanwhile, Sigrid, terrified and lost, hid deep in the forest, not knowing what to do next. Feeling pity for Frank, Sigrid decided to go back to the cabin. She picked up a wooden stick and returned to the place where Christian was torturing Frank. Seizing the moment, she struck Christian on the head, injuring him. Then she tried to help Frank escape, but Frank could barely walk, as if he had forgotten how to use his legs after being forced to live like a dog for so long. Before they could get far, Christian recovered and attacked them both, knocking them unconscious with a heavy blow. Afterward, he broke down, crying uncontrollably. Sometime later, we see Christian still living alone in the same cabin. He cooks food and takes it downstairs to the cage where Frank is imprisoned. Christian is still angry with him. While feeding, he deliberately spits into Frank's bowl in disgust. Yet, Frank eats it without complaint, afraid to anger him again. But what about Sigrid? Christian prepares another bowl and walks to the barn, where someone locked inside a cage is wearing a dog costume. It's Sigrid. She, too, has now been turned into a completely obedient pet, behaving exactly like a dog, just like Frank once did. Christian tells her, "If you behave well, I'll let you sleep inside the house tomorrow." Sigrid happily nods, wagging her head with joy, now fully broken and loyal to him. In the film's final and most shocking scene, we discover that there's also a child living in the house. Christian places a food bowl in front of the child, just like he did with Frank and Sigrid, treating the child as if they were an animal too. It's strongly implied that this child might actually be Frank and Sigrid's, possibly born because Christian forced them to breed. However, when seen metaphorically, this child can represent something much deeper, something symbolic about the film's meaning, which we'll discuss in the final interpretation. This is a Norwegian film, and everyone can interpret it in their own way. My understanding might be wrong, but to me, this film reflects a mirror of our real world. Christian's character represents a rich, powerful man, living in a big house, free from work or responsibility, spending his time on personal pleasures. To me, he symbolizes the elite class or controlling system of our world, the people who run everything but are themselves beyond control. In contrast, Frank and Sigrid represent the middle or working class, people the system molds and manipulates as it wants. This power structure forces them to become what they never chose to be, and because it's so strong and dangerous, no one dares to fight it. Ordinary people like Sigrid eventually surrender to it. When she tries to break free, she's punished, or perhaps destroyed. The film seems to say that sometimes, to survive, one must accept a kind of slavery. The child at the end gives this idea an even darker depth. It feels like the system is breeding new generations of slaves so it can live on through them. In short, the system never dies. It keeps expanding its control from one generation to the next. This is just my view. I've read many interpretations. Some see it as a reflection of modern dating culture, others about submission, identity, gaslighting, or the illusion of normalcy. It's a deeply layered, thought-provoking film that can be seen from many perspectives.